Tell you where we're going to start. Michigan absolutely beat down Ohio State 45-23. In which was probably, in my opinion, the single greatest win. Not only in the last 20 years, not only in the last 25 years, in my opinion, the single greatest win in the last, century. I think it's the greatest win in program history, and I'll tell you guys why. You went into Columbus. That was the talk the whole year, and I had my doubts. And the doubts really started to fill once Blake Corum went down. How would they win without Blake Corum? They had won all year with him. He was the Heisman hopeful. He was the Heisman frontrunner to some people. How would you win without Blake Corum in the Horseshoe, a place you haven't won since the year 2000? It didn't make sense.
Without Mike Morris, too.
Until it did.
Right.
Until it did. And I first want to just give a huge congratulations to Jim Harbaugh, to every Michigan Wolverine fan out there. Congratulations, you deserve it. I will be smoking through this whole pack probably throughout the show, and that'll be for you, so thank you guys. So here we are. Here we are. Michigan absolutely embarrassed, physically outmatched, mentally dominated Ohio State. And that was the story. And look, you like flash, you like sexy, Ohio State's offense. It's all great. But boy, they were mentally beat in that game. They weren't just physically dominated. Michigan at the end, yes. Donovan Edwards, 2 big runs. They controlled the line of scrimmage down the stretch, sure. But Jeff, my biggest takeaway was Ohio State, in my opinion, this is the weakest I've seen Ohio State mentally since the year before Urban Meyer took over when they were 6-6. This is the lowest point I have ever seen an Ohio State football team. The Ohio State I'm accustomed to is a team that dominates at the line of scrimmage, a team that really has a roster full of talent. And that didn't matter on Saturday. And it didn't matter last year either. You know why? Because Michigan had the mental edge. Michigan were more physical. Michigan were more, I would say, assertive. They had more urgency. And I look at both quarterbacks. Both teams are a reflection of their quarterback in that game. J.J. McCarthy on the sideline, swag, confidence, calm, no worries. Down 3, no worries. Down 7, no worries. 3 and out, no worries. C.J. Stroud, flustered, unsure of himself, sporadic with the plays he made. That was Ohio State. Both teams were a reflection of their quarterback play. And you saw J.J. McCarthy deliver what I think everybody expected before the season, but he delivered it in the game. Wow. I was floored. So impressed by what Michigan did, Jeff.
Yeah, no Mike Morris, really played limited snaps, and they had no Blake Corum. And again, those players, we talked about it on the college football show, even previewing the game, not having those two would be detrimental. No, actually it wasn't. Donovan Edwards played extremely well. I know the first half they struggled to run the ball. They really were tied at halftime, 17-20. But the difference was second half adjustments, and that's been really the storyline for Michigan all year. Go back to Penn State. You're leading 16-14 at the half. The second half, you outscore Penn State 25-3. Against Ohio State, you're down 17-20. The second half, 28-3. You outscore Ohio State. Jesse Minter, not even just Jesse Minter, but what they've been doing offensively and defensively in the second half, that was the turning point of the game. Not having two of your best players, arguably your best players, no problem. Guys stepped up. You could really point to a ton of people. I mean, Cornelius Johnson didn't have a 100-yard game all year. Has over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns against Ohio State. Had 2 huge plays. Loveland, the freshman tight end, you didn't really see a lot of him this year. Has one of his biggest games of his young career against Ohio State. Players stepped up. I thought JJ looked so poised. I know he threw 50% completion percentage, but those plays, those deep throws that he was not able to hit earlier in the year,
I thought he's turnover prone. I was told
I was
JJ
told that
McCarthy
too.
is JJ McCarthy is turnover prone.
He made the plays when they were there. And you know what impressed me the most about JJ, not even in Saturday's game, but the entire season? JJ at home, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. On the road, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. He has more touchdowns on the road this year than at home through the air. And that says a lot about a sophomore quarterback, his first season starting all year. He made big plays when they counted, and along with a lot of other Michigan players.
I was so impressed with what JJ was able to bring to the table, with what Jim Harbaugh and his team were mentally ready for. And I don't want this to be a bash Ohio State segment, but when you spend the whole year talking about this game, telling your fan base those guys are coming to town, and we're going to beat them, and we're going to be ready, you were the mentally weaker team, Ohio State. And that's not an accident. That is a reflection of your head coach. And I know a lot of you at the time would laugh at Jim Harbaugh, 0-7 against Ohio State. 0-7. No chance. Couldn't beat Urban Meyer, who's the second greatest college coach ever, in my opinion. But regardless, couldn't beat Urban Meyer. Why couldn't Michigan beat those Urban Meyer teams? Outside of that one game where there was a legitimate bad spot that was awful. But why? They weren't mentally prepared ever to take on an opponent like Ohio State, who were more physical than them, who were more dominant at the front seven. They were much better at the offensive line position. They could run the ball. This is not the Ohio State Urban built. This is flash. This is, don't punch us in the mouth and we'll beat you by 50. But if you punch us in the mouth, we're going to have a game. Maryland punched them in the mouth.
Right.
You saw throughout the season there were games, even Michigan had this problem too. Not so much a mental problem, but Michigan had an offensive problem. And suddenly Michigan went into 5th, 6th gear, I could even argue, which we had not seen all year. And they brought it out in the most important game of the year, the most important game in their program's history, in my opinion. You guys need to really understand what you just saw on Saturday. This is what you need to see, or excuse me. And no, Lloyd Carr did not beat Urban. What? Urban wasn't at Ohio State when Lloyd Carr was here, buddy. Having said that, moving on. Let's talk about your program, Michigan, and where you're heading, in my opinion. What's ahead of you? College football playoff expansion. So this game, arguably, I could make the argument, this is the last time you'll ever play this game. And it'll ever have this much meaning.
Yeah.
Because if it's a 12-team playoff this year, Ohio State's getting in.
Yeah.
Michigan's getting in if they lose.
You may see them again. There's a possibility of that too.
So you lose the wow, the why, the stakes. They just significantly go down. And this was the last time you would ever have a matchup that would ever be this important, likely, in the regular season, ever. And it was, of course, a battle of 2 undefeated teams. And, of course, it was not only ahead of the college football playoff expansion, Jeff. It was ahead of USC, UCLA coming to the Big Ten. How are you going to compete with some of these schools, especially USC, who are poised to be in the college football playoff year 1
right
under Lincoln Riley? How? How would you react in the horseshoe? How? You completely dominated a football team mentally. You took their will. You took their soul. Michigan were so much better than Ohio State. And look, at halftime, let's be honest, Ohio State dominated that game. And they were only up 3.
Michigan had 10 yards on the ground in the first
14 first downs compared to 6.
It
wasn't even close. But you know what? Michigan, mentally, were ready for anything.
Yeah.
Up at half, down at half. Down 15, up 15. It didn't matter for Michigan. It seemed like it mattered a lot for Ohio State. It seemed like they were frustrated. They were getting a little tense. They were playing tight. Their coach was play calling tight. That was just... We used to make fun of Jim for this because Urban Meyer would always have him in his back pocket. He would always have coach him or have something or have his team one step ahead of him at all times. Jim Harbaugh owns Ryan Day.
He coached circles around
Mentally
him in the second half, too.
And physically, his teams own Ryan Day's teams as of right now. And there's nothing you can say to debunk that or make an excuse for it.
And it almost like it seemed like the play calling defensively for Ohio State in the second half, it seemed stubborn. Like they weren't getting away from what was working in the first half. Like, yeah, you held Michigan to 10 yards rushing in the first half. Michigan made adjustments. Ohio State didn't seem like they did in the second half. And if you look at the totals, after posting just 10 yards on the ground in the first half for Michigan ended with 530 yards on offense, 278 passing, 252 rushing, and they had 5 scoring plays of 45 yards or more. Like, that just tells you, to talk about Michigan in the second half all year, it's been night and day. They've been able to make adjustments, and that speaks to coaching. So, again, Jim Harbaugh, even on the road, Jesse Minter, Sharon
How
Moore.
about Jesse Minter? How about that defense?
Matt Weiss, the entire staff.
Losing 3 first-round picks to turn it around and have a top 5 defense the following year.
Right.
Yes, the same system, but the following year. Getting production out of Chris Jenkins, Mike Morris, Michael Barrett, Mike Sanistril, unbelievable nickel corner. Unbelievable.
Made the position
he
change.
made some unbelievable plays in that game.
Made the position change this year to corner, and he's making plays.
All I can say is that I am so impressed with what Michigan did. I doubted them all week, and they not only proved the doubters wrong, they really... For the first time in my lifetime, Michigan are back. It wasn't last year when you won the Big Ten. You got the biggest monkey off your back by beating Ohio State at the Horseshoe. You hadn't done it since 2000. Michigan moving forward, watch out. You want to talk about momentum and where it lives in the college football landscape right now? I think of 4 programs, actually maybe 3. USC, Michigan, and Georgia. Anyone else have this type of momentum? Because I only see 3 teams. Unbelievable. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, Michigan's road to Columbus. This wasn't, again, I've already said it. Jeff, I want to have the conversation. I want to open up the phone lines to all of you. 313-552-6322. Call in. In my opinion, this is not only a program-defining win, it is the single greatest moment in program history. Because it very, very much could lead to your first national title appearance in forever. It could lead to your first national championship, legitimately playing for one, in forever. We are talking about the next 90 days, possibly, being, I would say, forever changing the college football landscape for the next 10 years if Michigan are able to do a few things that not many expected before the year. Now, of course, you have your Michigan people that, of course, expected their team to contend. But could they beat a Georgia? Could they go to the college football playoff and win a big game? I'm more confident than ever. And I would imagine all of you are too.
Especially with how the college football landscape looks this year. I think you should have more confidence.